I've dealt with enough snakes. This goes back to my childhood, and I'm not going to digress, but I would have left the building by then. But Moses was convinced, by now at least, that God could be trusted. And so he acted. And from that point on, I think he lived a different life. He got a little weary of leading God's people in the wilderness for a long time. But there was a pattern created, I think, in Moses and in others. Yeah, Bill? Yes, it did. I don't think I would have liked picking up the middle either. But I went to counseling to get over this episode, so I'm not going to go there. There were snakes in my childhood. But anyway, you're right, Bill. It was the tail, which no, I would have been hitting the road. But what I was getting to is the pattern in Scripture, not just with Moses, but with others. The first step is taken, and then and only then does God reveal himself. We might like to reverse that. Give us a sign, then we'll take a step. We talked a little bit about that last week. Great Christian missionary Hudson Taylor once said, there are 3 stages in any work for God: impossible, difficult, done. I like that. So this is an extreme first step that we're talking about. With us, as I said, ours may not be as obvious and as dramatic, but we should and must seize our opportunities. As somebody said, do the best you can with what you have where you are. I've always liked that. I've got that actually written down and cross-stitched. I think that is absolutely beautiful. Do the best you can with what you have where you are. We have to take steps to take advantage of some of the opportunities God gives us, or they will pass us by. John says getting out of our boats is risky, but how else are we going to discover that God's grace is sufficient? If we never put ourselves in those situations, how will we ever know? Now, the tail of the snake notwithstanding, there are limits in life, and we know that. The disciples had limits. We all have limits. We internalize them sometimes. We try to deny them or pretend that they're not real. But we've lived long enough to know that not everything that we want to do is possible. Some things in life can't be fixed. And that's a sobering truth to control freaks. How, presuming to be in control and ignorant of some of the limits we have. What we end up doing is lose sight of the boundaries where our abilities end. What limits have stopped you? What first steps have you not taken? I'm too old. I have a family to consider. I have too much invested where I am. That idea is too crazy, Mike. It's never been done. What if I fail? What if people dislike me? I can't tell you the tapes, the negative stuff running around in my mind, all the limits and things, the way that has affected me in my life and in yours. Here's the truth. We all have limits, but we serve an unlimited God who wants to use us. Our limits notwithstanding. Our confidence lies in God's character, not in the safety or security of our situations or our abilities to cope. George Bernard Shaw, who was a cynic, and I don't like all of the things he wrote, but he said one thing that I think is absolutely wise, that people always blame their circumstances for what they are. I do not believe in circumstances. People who succeed look for the circumstances they want, and if they don't find them, they make them. Take that for what it's worth. That involves courage. We're gonna get to that in a second. Now I've beat up on those other 11 in the boat quite a bit, I think, in the last couple of weeks. But if we followed them into the book of Acts, what would we see? They're not in the boat anymore, are they? They've stopped living as victims. They've stopped dwelling on their limits. They've stopped blaming their circumstances. Now they are turning every situation into an opportunity for ministry. And I think Jesus understood that. I think the way he matured them is remarkable. It was as if he held up a mirror in front of their faces and showed them what they could become. Hall of Fame baseball legend Yogi Berra once said something that I thought was real witty and wise. He said, when you come to a fork in life's road, take it. Well, which way? Well, that's between you and God, isn't it? We like details. We want more information, we who are control freaks. God says walk by faith. Faith isn't knowing what's coming next. Faith is knowing that God knows. But first steps must be taken in so many parts of life. And that involves overcoming the fears that we have and the fears we often like to conceal. We never know in advance all that we would like to know. The risk involved. What bothers us sometimes are the unintended consequences that result from things we didn't anticipate. Will Rogers was terribly afraid of making changes in his routine, in his act. One day somebody challenged him, and Will started rethinking that, and he said, why not climb out on a limb? That's where the fruit is. That's where the fruit of faith is, too. You have to climb out sometimes. And we never find the fruit unless we put ourselves in positions where our abilities are clearly not enough. We don't literally step out of a boat and drown, but we should be over our heads every once in a while. Do you realize that most of what God accomplishes in our lives isn't because of us, it's in spite of us? I had to really think about